Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 189 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you?
I'm good, man. How about you?
I'm doing great.
Yeah?
We're taping this before Thanksgiving. Let's just go ahead and assume that we had a great holiday.
Sure.
And hope that everybody else did too that celebrates it.
Yeah.
Always tough when you're taping things kind of ahead of time. Can't say, well, I did this, I did that.
It was just good.
It was
That's
just,
all we know.
we just assume because it's always good.
Yeah.
We have some amazing supporter shout outs to give. So let's give those. We had Rachel B.
Hey, Rachel.
Anna Tavel.
Hey, Tavella.
Mallory McCamish.
What's up, McCamish?
Tessa Turner.
Hey, Tessa.
Giovanni.
Ooh, Giovanni.
Melissa Crescentini.
Cressatini.
Kaylee Stevenson.
Hey, Kaylee.
Nicole Millist.
Hey, what's going on, Nicole?
Cheyenne.
Hey, Cheyenne.
Alex S.
Hey, Alex.
Amanda.
What's going on, Amanda?
Kathy McDermott.
Hey, Kathy.
Naomi Stock.
Well, hey, Naomi.
Waldes Rand.
What's going on, Walters Rand?
Chris Mejias.
Hey, Mahias.
Shell Nelson.
Hey, thanks, Shell.
Bryce Carnicom.
Cornicon.
Are you saying corn on the cob?
Or corn on the cob.
It's Carnicom.
Cornicon.
Maria Albini.
Hey, Maria.
Gina Barber.
Hey, Gina.
Rosie Knight.
Hey, what's going on, Rosie?
But, some they'll reach out to me and say, no, Gibby's right. It was corn on the cob. Yep.
I'm just saying.
Kristen Edmondson.
What's going on, Kristen?
Eric Messenger.
Hey, Eric, what's the message?
And Marissa Berryman.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. Get it?
I got it.
You didn't laugh as like you should have.
It would have been funnier if you said, don't shoot the messenger.
I'm just saying.
That would have been funnier.
Yeah. Hey, Marissa.
I got you. And then if we go back into the vault, Gibbs. This week we selected Sharon Diaz. So we appreciate that. Yeah, Sharon's been with us a long time.
Yeah.
We appreciate the new support, the continued support. I think especially during these trying times, this pandemic. I mean, I think everybody knows that across the board, podcasts advertising is down. So we need the support that we're getting very much, and it's very much appreciated. We had some great PayPal donations from Kelly Duncan.
I wonder what it's like to grow up with free donuts and coffee every day.
I know. Being part of that Duncan empire.
Yeah. Hey, Kelly.
Shannon McIntyre.
What's going on, Shannon?
Heather Allen.
Hey, Heather.
And Mary Ashley.
What's going on, Mary?
No Kate.
Mary. Oh, nice. Nice. I got you.
All right, Gibbs, we have a ton of stuff out.
We do.
We just put out a brand new Patreon-only episode on Peter Shoebridge.
Yeah.
Really rough. This was a guy, we're in Tasmania, Australia. This was a guy who murdered his 4 daughters for a whole host of reasons. None of them make any sense, obviously. But then there's a connection to our True Crime All the Time episode that's out right now. It's part 1 of Martin Bryant and the Port Arthur massacre, which also happened in Tasmania.
Yeah.
So there's a connection there because those events that happened in Port Arthur had a direct effect a year later in the thinking of Peter Shoebridge.
It sure did.
So that's how we kind of, decided to do them at the same time. Gibbs, you had a great idea that I wanted to let everybody know about. The reviews are in. A lot of people really got a kick out of that, right? Now, not enough people listened to it for us to continue doing it. I don't know that it was ever going to be viable.
Right.
But your suggestion was to put the episodes that we did do on Patreon. So, at kind of an added bonus. So we'll put those out in December, and people that are already supporters on Patreon can enjoy them. If you're not, now's a great time to do it.
Yeah. Go check those out.
All right, buddy. Are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved?
Man, I am.
We are talking about the murder of Princess Doe in New Jersey in 1982. And by the name Princess Doe, obviously that means we'll also be talking about the identity of this victim. It was on July 15th, 1982 in Blairstown, New Jersey. a rural farm town with a population of about 4,800, that George Keiss, a caretaker at the Cedar Ridge Cemetery, made a gruesome discovery. He was walking the grounds, cleaning it up. I'm sure something that he probably did on a daily basis.
Yeah, just the norm, right?
As part of his job. When he walked over a steep bank by the creek, he stumbled onto a body. This part of the cemetery is in the wooded section on the north side near State Route 94. The body was a young Caucasian female, partially nude, lying face up. Her face had been beaten so severely, it was essentially crushed, Gibbs, and really unrecognizable. So a pretty brutal find for this guy in the normal course of his job.
Yeah. I mean, to see something like that
with no warning.
Oh,
You're not a coroner
no.
who's been called and told ahead of time that you're going to be viewing a body.
Yeah.
Something that you do on a regular basis. This is just a guy walking around the cemetery who he knows there's a lot of bodies buried there because it's a cemetery.
Yeah, and he might dig the hole and
he might
lower the casket in there, but he's not the one that's actually seeing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So definitely not the norm, and it would be pretty terrifying, pretty jarring. The body was in an advanced decomposition stage at the time of discovery. George called the authorities out to the cemetery. Once they got on site, they began their investigation and also called out the medical examiner. The investigators arrived on the scene along with the medical examiner. It was noted that the victim had on a short-sleeved V-neck shirt that was red. A long wraparound skirt that was red, white, and blue was found lying on top of the nude lower half of her body. No bra or underwear was found on site or anywhere near the body. Also on the body was a gold necklace that had a gold cross attached to it. The necklace must have gotten twisted around because the cross was found on the back of her neck, tangled up in her hair. She had 2 earrings in her left ear, and only her right hand had fingernail polish on it. The color was red. So once they were done processing the scene where the body was found, it was moved to the Morris Tri-County Medical Examiner's office. Gibbs, I want to go back to the fingernail polish.
Yeah.
That's the one that really jumped out at me. Most people go all in, right? You either have fingernail polish on both hands or none at all.
Right.
Now I get it. It starts to chip. It starts to wear away, but to have it completely gone from one hand and have this color red on the other, you have to say that's a little strange.
It is. And I told you, as far as your nail polish stuff, that you need to buy that better brand.
Yeah, I don't use a very nice brand.
Yeah. But for her, maybe she had one hand done and got interrupted, that she never finished with the other hand.
I think you could make a bunch of different theories out of it, that being one. You could make a theory that, depending on the determination of how old that fingernail polish was,
right?
Could the killer have painted it on one hand?
Might have. Maybe that was a fetish they had. They painted on one or started to paint it on one and
was going to paint both and didn't.
Right.
So I think there's a number of different theories there. I'll go with the third one, which is, again, based on how old it was. And I don't know the answer to that question.
Right.
Could it have been that, she had taken off the left hand?
True.
And then was attacked or whatever before she could finish taking off the right. A lot of different things that you can theorize about that. The medical examiner estimated the female body to be between 14 and 18 years old and was about 5'2" and weighed about 100 pounds.
Kind of tiny.
But, again, you got a 4-year age gap there.
Yeah.
You could have a tiny 14-year-old. You could also have an 18-year-old that's 5'2", 100, My wife's tiny. We talk about it all the time.
We do.
She's 5'2", 5'3", weighs 100 and some pounds. I
Right.
mean, you could pick her up and twirl her around with your hand if you wanted to.
She didn't like that last time I
She
did
didn't.
that. It
She
did
actually
not go well.
She told me that.
Yeah.
She wanted you to stop.
Yeah, I'll never forget that moment.
The medical examiner initially thought that she had been dead for 7 to 10 days, but then later revised it around July 11th. I think what they figured out, Gibbs, was that the decomposition was advanced. It had set in quickly because of the hot temperatures and the humidity.
Well, that will do it.
Yes. And it definitely can throw off or has a big effect when you're trying to determine the time of death. The medical examiner labeled the cause of death as blunt force trauma. So they believe that she was beaten with some type of blunt object, blunt weapon, and confirmed that her face had been beaten so badly that, like I said, it was unrecognizable. The ME could not confirm whether or not Princess Doe was sexually assaulted, as no semen had been found. Because of the decomposition, it would be challenging to determine whether a sexual assault had occurred. And you and I find that in a lot of these cases.
Yeah, I was getting ready to say the same thing. We've seen this time and time again because of the decomposition, that it's almost impossible.
Yes. I think it plays a big factor in determining a lot of things, and that being one of them. The medical examiner reported that Princess Doe at one point had her back up against the person who killed her because of the bruising to her arms and hands as she struggled to escape and as she was trying to protect her face. The toxicology report stated that she didn't have any drugs in her system. Also, there was no signs of alcohol, but it was not entirely conclusive because of the amount of time that had elapsed between death and the discovery of the body. Princess Doe had straight brown hair to her shoulders, but because of the massive damage to her face, they couldn't even determine her eye color. And I think that tells you a lot.
Yeah, that right there, how brutal that had to be.
It was mentioned that prior to her death, she had been in good health. It looked like she was well nourished. Princess Doe had no scars, birthmarks, or tattoos. And I think this is huge, Gibbs, in an unsolved case where you have a Jane Doe, or in this case, a Princess Doe. Scars, birthmarks, tattoos are huge.
Sure.
Sometimes in helping to identify someone, because some of them are very identifiable,
Right,
and very unique.
Yeah.
Right? A birthmark, a scar. Now, somebody can have the same butterfly tattoo, but are they going to have it in the same place? Is a family member going to have a picture of it? So, without any of that stuff, I think it makes law enforcement, it makes police's job even tougher.
And just for that reason is why I have my tattoo I have now.
Yeah, but you won't disclose what it is or the location.
It's in my file. If anything ever happens to me, if you can get into my safe and find the file, it's there.
The file.
Yeah.
Her front 2 teeth were a few shades darker than the rest of her teeth. They theorized that she was most likely a smoker.
Pretty common.
Pretty common to be a smoker, or pretty common to get tooth discoloration?
Pretty common to get tooth discoloration if
Yes.
you're a smoker and you smoke it through the same spot every time.
Now, I will say, though, in 1982,
Yeah,
much more common to be a smoker
absolutely.
than
was.
it is today.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. But they did say that her teeth were well cared for. And I think all of this really, is important when you're talking about appears to be in good health, appears to be well nourished, appears to have taken good care of her teeth. That means most likely she had, family, she had support, She had somebody that had insurance. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so she was definitely taking care of
Taking
herself
care of
somehow.
Yeah, either by herself on her own,
Right.
or if she was younger, part of a family that helped take care of her.
Right.
The medical examiner was also able to determine that Princess Doe had never given birth and was not pregnant at the time of her death. Now, Gibbs, we've been referring to her as Princess Doe, but initially, I think as is most often the case, she was just called Jane Doe. But then investigator Eric Kranz of the Blairstown Police named her Princess Doe because of her age and small body frame. I think Eric knew that there just had to be someone out there who was missing her. Someone had to have cared for her, and she was somebody's princess. That's kind of the way that he viewed it. And from there on, she became known as Princess Doe. She would be Blairstown's princess. In January 1983, about 6 months after the body of Princess Doe was discovered, she was laid to rest in the same cemetery that she had been discovered in, the Cedar Ridge Cemetery.
Yeah, and the same guy that found her, the caretaker George Keiss, buried her.
Which, I don't know, Gibbs, had to have been very surreal for this guy.
I would think so, yeah.
I mentioned it. Jarring, nightmare-inducing, I would think, to discover a body. But then 6 months later, as part of your job,
Right.
you're asked to bury this person. Now, that part, that's what you do every day.
Yeah.
Normally, it probably doesn't hit you, but this time it would because of what you had gone through 6 months earlier.
And maybe for him, it was some type of needed closure.
And it could have been. It definitely could have been. The authorities held off until January, in the hopes that her family would come forward to identify her remains. And obviously, if that had happened, she could have been taken home for a proper burial.
Which, you would want that for anybody.
Absolutely. The problem is no one ever came forward to claim her. Blairstown's people were saddened over this. So they came together, paid for her funeral, donated a coffin, a plot, and even a headstone.
Says a lot about that town.
It really does. I don't know anything about Blairstown, New Jersey, but I agree with you in the fact that it says something about the people there.
Yeah.
That they were so moved by, what had happened to this poor girl, or this poor woman, if she was in fact 18 years old. Either way, she was very young.
Sure.
And, the fact that no one came forward, she was not able to be identified. They said, you know what? We're not going to let her be buried in a pauper's grave or whatever they had in place.
Right.
She's going to have a plot. She's going to have a coffin, and she's going to have a headstone. And on the headstone, the inscription simply read, Princess Doe, missing from home, dead among strangers, remembered by all. Born ? Found July 15th, 1982. So during this first 6 months, the investigators, which included the local police, the county sheriff's department, state police, and the FBI, they all had two theories. One, either she was a runaway, or two, someone had abducted her from her family. The investigators didn't believe that she was murdered at the cemetery, rather that she was murdered somewhere else and then placed there by her killer. Investigators looked at every possible way to try to identify Princess Doe. They entered her information into the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children's database. Investigators searched the tri-state area schools for any potential missing persons that matched her description.
Well, I think it's important, right? I mean, if you want to solve the murder, you kind of got to know who the victim is.
It's pretty important.
Right? So you can kind of figure out where she's been, what she's been doing, who knows her, and put all that together. It's so much harder to do it if you don't have the identity
You got to work backwards from there,
Yeah.
right? Who is your victim? Who does the victim know?
Yeah.
Where does she come from? Yeah. Without knowing that, you got no leads. I don't know how you can have a possible lead without knowing who the victim
Exactly.
is.
Yeah.
Unless somebody just came forward, Gibbs, and said, you know what? On such and such a night, I saw this man in the cemetery disposing of a body.
Right.
Okay, well, there you got a lead.
Exactly.
But short of that, you're not going to be able to work backwards into anything. Investigators reconstructed her face to try to help in figuring out her identity. They tried different hair colors. Investigators released the pictures of what she might look like, as well as the pictures of her clothing that she had been wearing and her necklace. They released all of this to the media, hoping to generate some leads, and it worked, right? They took in hundreds of leads, vetted them, figured out which ones they needed to follow up on. One of these leads was a witness who said she had seen a girl who matched Princess Doe's description. She saw her inside the grocery store next to the cemetery days before her body was found. Another witness came forward and told investigators that she and her daughter had seen a similar woman to the posted pictures in the grocery store near the cemetery around the same time frame as the first witness. This second witness said that she appeared to be fine. She wasn't stressed. She didn't seem to be upset.
Well, I mean, it just tells you that whatever happened clearly happened after the fact, right? I mean, she wasn't
worried that someone was out to get her.
Yeah.
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 I also think it's important that you have two different witnesses saying essentially the same thing, seeing the same person at the same time, right? Lends credibility
Yes.
to the fact that it most likely happened.
Wasn't just somebody thinking they might have seen her, right? Or someone making something up. It was actually separate individuals coming up with the same scenario.
In April 1983, HBO aired a special about unidentified human remains, and Princess Doe was featured on this show. The investigators were hoping that with a broad audience, it might generate some additional leads. On June 30th, 1993, almost a year after Princess Doe had been discovered, she became the first unidentified person to be entered into the NCIC computer database by the FBI. On July 16th, 1983, investigators unveiled a lifelike bust of Princess Doe based on the forensic artist's interpretations of the remains. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children received a tip shortly after the HBO special. A woman said that she had worked at a motel near Blairstown just days before the murder when someone who looked like Princess Doe checked in. The woman didn't recall the name that she gave, but said the motel did not keep good records, as a lot of people back then paid in cash.
You stayed at those motels before?
I did not, but in 1982, you could pay in cash.
Oh, all the time, right?
Yeah, today,
No.
they like a credit card.
Yeah.
Because someone like you is going to go in, they're going to trash it up like a
Punisher?
rock band.
Like the Punisher did in season 2?
Yeah, so they've kind of gone the way of the credit card. Most motels have. But this woman did recall that Princess Doe said she had run away from her home in Florida and that her father was a dentist.
Which is kind of telling when they talked earlier, the medical examiner, about how she had really good teeth, well cared for teeth, besides the dark stain from maybe potential smoking.
Yeah, I figure if your dad is a dentist, your mom is a dentist, you're going to have very well cared for teeth.
Yeah.
They're going to make you brush like crazy, floss, never miss your checkups, because they're probably going to do them, and
probably don't let you have candy.
No, they're going to take good care of your teeth. This woman also said that Princess Doe stated she was looking for work and asked the woman if they needed a maid there at the hotel or knew of any other local motel needing a maid. Investigators also received some tips about Princess Doe working as a motel maid in and around the area, including the beach resort area of Ocean City, Maryland. So again, Gibbs, I would say, these tips, investigators had to feel as though they were promising, right? Because there's some confirmation to some of these things.
Well, investigators have to be happy because they're zeroing in on some locations.
Yeah, I think all of these tips are good.
Allows them to have something to follow up on, to dig deeper, to see if it goes anywhere.
Yeah, because you need that first part, right? You need the first step. And then what you're hoping is you get there, you investigate there, that leads you on to something else, even bigger, more concrete. So after getting those leads and some other leads, investigators were more convinced that Princess Doe may have been a runaway for several years before she was murdered. But after investigating, these different leads, they really didn't get that next break and the case went cold, right? They, at this point, still didn't know, one, who Princess Doe was,
right,
and two, who murdered her.
And they go hand in hand, You got to have the one to get the other.
Yeah.
Preferably, you need to know who the heck she was to move forward, like you've said already.
Yeah. Now we have, I think if you remember, we've had some cases where the murderer actually was identified and then helped identify the victim.
Yeah.
And specifically, I'm thinking, was that Buckskin Girl where that happened?
I think you're right.
I could be wrong about that, but for some reason I was thinking they identified the fact that he had murdered a girl in that area.
Yeah.
And then they figured out that it was her, and then they got her identity after that. So now we jump forward all the way to 1999. And that's when investigators got a tip that Princess Doe might have been in Long Island, New York, forced into an underage sex ring. A woman who once lived in Long Island had a story to tell the investigators. In 1999, Donna Kinlaw was arrested in California while attempting welfare fraud under an alias of a murdered victim. During her questioning, she told the authorities about how she had once lived in Long Island and other New York City boroughs. She said in 1984 that she and her husband murdered a teenage girl they had befriended. They had built up a sex ring, Gibbs, and they wanted this girl for that sex ring, but she refused. Now, not only did she refuse, but she told them she was going to turn them in.
That's normally where good for her.
Yes.
But normally you want to say, I'm not willing to do it, or let me get back to you, and then go to the police.
Don't announce your intentions.
Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah, because they killed her and dumped her into the river. But Gibbs, not too hard for police to look up this murder, right? Once they have the name, they get the particulars and they remind Donna exactly how brutal this murder was. The victim had been bound, was suffocated, and her head was bludgeoned to the point where she was unrecognizable. And to keep the victim quiet, they shoved parts of her blouse down her throat.
Brutal, man.
Oh, it's an extremely brutal murder. So Donna's in trouble, and she tries to help out her situation by telling the police about another murder. Now, she says she wasn't involved in this one. Her husband had committed it.
Yeah. But she's going to have all the details.
Yeah, she knew everything about it. She just didn't actually participate in the commission of the murder. She told them about another teenage girl that her husband, Arthur, was trying to force into his sex ring of underage girls. This was 1982. She said Arthur brought the girl to their home and offered her refuge. But when the teen refused to participate in this sex ring, Donna said Arthur left with the girl, who was never seen again. She told police that Arthur had mentioned to her on several occasions that he killed that girl, just as he did 2 others before. And she went on to tell police that the girl her husband murdered is Princess Doe, who was found in New Jersey.
Well, that's pretty critical information.
It's very pointed.
Yes.
Right? It's very specific. You're not saying it could be. You're saying it is.
Yeah, you're like, it is. This is who it is.
So as you can imagine, police went to question Arthur. He gave a little bit of a different account of what occurred, but in the end, he did admit that he killed her.
Well, I imagine he probably said, I wasn't doing that by myself. Is she trying to say I did this by myself? No, she always helps me with this stuff. I'm not going down alone, buddy.
But here's the problem with the story that Arthur gave. It didn't align with what authorities knew about how Princess Doe was murdered and found. They didn't have all the details, but they had enough to know when somebody was telling something that didn't line up. They had no physical evidence. And of course, they still didn't know the identity of Princess Doe. And that would be critical, right? As we've kind of talked about specifically here, to place her in Long Island at that time with the Kinlaws.
And you would think if she was in their house at some point, she had to say, hey, my name is something, right? And they couldn't even remember what her name was. I mean, if you picked somebody up and you brought them back to your house and you wanted to you would at least have a first name, I would think. Hey, my name's Michelle.
Yeah, I think maybe you would have it. The question is, would you remember it after 17, 18 years?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it sounds like these were really bad people,
right?
And they may have interacted with a large number of young girls, none of which appears to have been in a good way.
Right.
So I get what you're saying, but I'm also thinking that if you've interacted with that many people, would you be able to remember? Maybe not.
Probably not. You're right.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
But I think in the end, when it comes to both Donna and Arthur Kinlaw, they just weren't credible. Now, Donna did sit with a forensic artist, and the composite he drew was extremely close in comparison to the one that had been done in previous years. So I don't know, Gibbs. Maybe they're telling the truth. Maybe they got some of the details wrong. Or maybe Donna remembered seeing the picture in the press or on the news or on one of these specials.
Right.
I don't know. Police didn't think they were telling the truth. I think that's the bottom line. And they weren't able to really provide the police with any good information anyway. So even if they were telling the truth, how was it to help the police?
Right.
They still didn't know who Princess Doe was.
Nope.
They didn't have the evidence that it would have taken to convict these people anyway. I don't think they would have been able to get a conviction based on the shoddy information that these people gave them.
No, not with any decent defense attorney.
Some in the local community thought the killer could have been a man named John Reese. Reese was a local resident who, in 1987, sexually assaulted and murdered his downstairs neighbor, Elizabeth Cornish. He tied her hands, blindfolded her, and sexually assaulted her in her bed, and then he hit her repeatedly on the head with a hammer, smashing her skull and face. All right, that is definitely a guy who could have committed any murder.
Sure.
If you can do that, you're pretty much capable of anything, in my book.
And he's living in that town.
Yeah, they can put him there.
Yeah.
The problem is they had no evidence of a connection between John Reese and Princess Doe back in 1982. You know, like you like to say, Gibbs, we're researching this case and here you go.
Yeah.
We find another bad person living in the same community where our victim was found.
And remember, you're talking about a small population.
Yeah.
So it's just,
It's scary.
it is.
I will continue to say that it scares me when we uncover things like this because, I think most people will transfer it onto their situation.
Yeah.
Okay, here I am in small town USA. I have X number of people in my town. Do I have 4 or 5 killers legitimately living in the same town that I live in, operating right now?
Yeah.
You may.
You might.
I don't know. If you're in a bigger town, you may have a bunch more.
Oh, yeah. Bigger town, the odds are so great. Scary.
If you're not scared by that, then there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
Over the years, some big time names like Henry Lee Lucas or Joel Rifkin have been tossed out as potential killers of Princess Doe. Now, we all know anybody who has watched anything on Henry Lee Lucas, that guy, if you asked him, would have said he did it.
Yep, that was me. I did that. I remember that. Yep. Let me draw a picture of the victim for you.
Because he basically claimed to have killed everyone that anybody ever mentioned to him.
Right.
And the problem with Rifkin is his known killings didn't start until 1989. But who knows, Gibbs? It doesn't mean he couldn't have killed earlier. He couldn't have killed in this area of New Jersey. I don't know how likely it is, and I don't think that police consider either of these guys to be likely candidates to have killed Princess Doe. But you have this in any unsolved case, right?
Right.
Any big time serial killer, if you can put them anywhere near or time frames or anything, there's going to be some people that will link them.
We always hear it. It might have been that guy. It might have been this guy.
On September 22nd, 1999, the body of Princess Doe was exhumed from the Cedar Ridge Cemetery in Blairstown so that DNA samples could be taken in the hopes that they could be used to find her identity. The body was reburied in the same location, but no positive results were returned, and the case continued on as cold. And again, I think this is something that you see with a lot of older, unsolved, unidentified victim cases.
Right.
In 1982, no DNA.
Nope.
Or no way to use DNA. I shouldn't say there was no DNA. There's always been DNA.
But probably the proper way to collect it and utilize it and analyze it.
Right. To take a sample and then compare it to something, right? That came along later. But by 1999, they could do that. They did. The problem was there was nothing to match it to. She wasn't in any database. Around this same time frame, some law enforcement members were leaking to the press that they believed Princess Doe was in fact Diane Dye, a missing teenager who disappeared from San Jose, California in July of 1979. One lead investigator from the state of New Jersey took it upon himself to hold a press conference stating Diane Dye was Princess Doe. Local investigators were very quick to discredit this statement. So, I think it's interesting, Gibbs, from the standpoint of this guy taking it upon himself to hold a press conference.
Right.
Number one, very strange. That couldn't have gone over very well, I would think, with his superiors. And then, number two, to make this very bold statement with seemingly no evidence whatsoever.
Right.
Just his belief that Diane Dye is Princess Doe. To me, that's very strange. And again, I don't know what happened to this guy. I don't know if he got rebuked or reprimanded or whatever. I don't know what implications it had on the investigation or anything like that, because like I said, local investigators were very quick to come out and say, it's not true.
Right.
There's no evidence. Don't believe that. What I will say is, if that type of thing got back to Diane Dye's family, which it most likely would have, I think that could have been very harmful to them.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? It's been a long time. many, many years. They don't know what happened to their daughter, their sister, their loved one. Now you have a person in authority who is coming out and very matter of factly saying, hey, this is who this person is.
Yeah. She's dead and we have her remains.
Mm-hmm.
Boom.
And then for the family, if they, to hear that and then find out that this guy's kind of gone rogue.
Yeah.
And doesn't really have the evidence to back up what he's saying, that could be pretty devastating for them.
Emotional roller coaster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But even so, there were some who speculated it could be Diane. So in 2003, Princess Doe's DNA was compared with a DNA sample from one of Diane's family members. It was conclusively determined that Princess Doe was not Diane Dye. In 2012, the Smithsonian Institute used the newest technology to create a 3D composite of Princess Doe. It's considered the most accurate representation of what Princess Doe looked like in 1982. Also in 2012, hair samples and a tooth were examined through isotope analysis. These tests indicated that Princess Doe was most likely born in the United States and had lived 7 to 10 months in the Midwestern or Northeastern portion of the country prior to her death. It also showed she could have been initially from the Western New Mexico or Eastern Arizona region.
I always find those interesting.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating how, that technology can kind of pinpoint where you've been,
Right.
where you're from. You and I are not smart enough to understand how it all works.
No.
Well, you are.
Well, I don't want to brag.
Yeah. I mean, you do teach a class on it, but
Right.
I'm not smart enough to understand how it all works. But I do find it extremely fascinating.
Oh, absolutely. That they can even determine off some hair and a tooth that she might have been from Arizona or New Mexico. And that X amount of months prior to her death, she had to be living in this region. Well, how is that? I mean, that's
Isotopes, man.
Isotopes.
Isotopes. But even with all of these advancements, this case still remains unsolved. Now, investigators have stated the case remains open. It's an open cold case after 38 years. No arrests have ever been made. They do have Princess Doe's clothing, dental information, fingerprints, and DNA on file if they need to utilize them at a later date. This unsolved identification and murder case of Princess Doe is taught in courses at the FBI Academy in Quantico, Virginia. Those with any information regarding the identity of Princess Doe are asked to contact the New Jersey State Police at 1-800-709-7090. Gibbs, as you and I were researching this case, we did see that in the town of Blairstown, New Jersey, there's been some controversy around some museum and tours regarding Princess Doe.
Little uproar in the town.
Some of the locals are upset over a group of other locals trying to profit from the death of Princess Doe. They all agree that people should be able to visit the gravesite and show respect, but I think where people differ regarding this tour and charging individuals almost $40 to visit the museum about Princess Doe. The tour also takes them to where the body was found in the cemetery. It's a public cemetery, so anybody could drive there on their own if they chose to. The tour operators have said they're just trying to keep her story out there in hopes that something may come from it. You and I have both been in places where murder tours were offered. New Orleans comes to mind.
Sure,
There's a lot of them there. There's definitely a fascination to these types of things. Many people want to see where some of these big cases took place, the locations of critical spots in the case, things like that. In the end, I'm okay with things like this as long as it's respectful you have to be respectful of the victim, the sites.
Right.
You don't want to deface them, disturb them, all that stuff. And I think, of course, the family.
Yes.
Is it respectful to the family? Is it helpful? I mean, there's a lot of ways to look at it. In the end, to these people, it's a business.
Yeah, I mean, it's 38 years. Nobody knows who the family is. I don't know.
It's kind of hard to be disrespectful to the family when right now nobody has any information of who that is.
Right.
But like with anything, you're going to have people on both sides.
Sure.
You're going to have people that say, yeah, I'm fine with that. And you're going to have people that say, no, you shouldn't try to profit off this, and this.
Right.
So people have differing opinions. It's part of what makes this country what it is.
It is.
But that's it, Gibbs, for the unsolved identification and murder of Princess Doe. We got some voicemails. You want to check those out?
Let's check them out, man.
Hi, Mike and Gibby. This is Kina again, calling from California. I just have an unsolved case that I'm super obsessed with. It happened in 2009. Shortly after the Kaylee Anthony thing, the girl was a little 5-year-old girl from Florida also named Haley Cummings. It's a really interesting story because there's a cast of characters, her family, and everything's kind of shady around it. Unfortunately, she's never been seen or heard from, and it's just a really sad case. But again, I would love to hear your guys' take on it. So yeah, her name is Haley Cummings, and like I said, the Casey Anthony case kind of overshadowed this, but this little girl deserves justice as well. So that would be great if you could, take a look at that story and let us know how you guys feel about it. All right. Well, thank you again for listening to my messages, and Gibby, I hope you continue to recover. I love you guys, and keep your own time ticking. Thanks. Bye.
Well, hey, thanks for that. And that's a interesting case. We'll definitely have to look at that. I would say if you have any unsolved cases, to email them to truecrimegibby@gmail.com. If you have any solved cases, email those to truecrimeallthetime@gmail.com.
Yep, that's right. Now, I'll go back to what she said. The Casey Anthony case, that definitely overshadowed everything.
Yeah.
During that time period. I mean, it was so big, it just kind of dominated the news. And it is kind of sad that, some of these other cases that happened at the same time, they're not going to get the same coverage just because everybody was so focused on that case.
Right.
Hey, Mike. Hey, Gibby. I just started listening to your guys' podcast maybe a few months back, and then you guys introduced me to the TCAT Unsolved, which I have been binging regularly. You guys just gave me a shout out. Mike Fergie, you got my last name right on the second go around. It is Ungahire, and you are the first of very few people who have actually pronounced it correctly. So I showed my dad the podcast. Love you guys. I have introduced you to every single one of my friends, and you guys just do an incredible job. I love your banter. I love your back and forth. I love Gibby, just everything you do. It's so fantastic. Fergie, you are the best. I'm Team Mike all the way, Mike squared, and thank you guys so much for everything you do, and keep your own time ticking. Thanks. Bye.
Yeah, Fergie is the best. If you only knew, you would all say Fergie is the best.
I'm just happy I got something right. I got a name right. Now, normally if I get a couple of shots at it, I got a pretty good chance.
Yeah, you do.
She said on that second try, I got it right.
Second time.
Hi, Mike and Gibby. This is Evelyn. I'm from Belgium. I just started listening to your podcast, and I'm already binging. I really love it. I was wondering if you can do some Belgian cases. I already mailed you guys with a few. You all say keep your own time ticking. Well, that's true. Please keep your own time ticking, but also don't take someone else's time, because every life is important. So keep your own time ticking, that of someone else, and yeah, I really love it. Bye.
Belgium.
So we've looked into some cases. You know, I won't lie. Some of the cases over there, Belgium, Denmark, Sweden, they're a little tougher when it comes to the research because, okay, not everything's in English. And, some of the translators don't work all that well, the electronic translators.
But we've done a few European cases.
Yeah, we have.
You know.
But there is no doubt they're harder when it comes to the research.
Well,
no doubt about it.
You don't trust my ability to translate.
No, that's why I said some of the translators are have issues. I didn't want to call you out.
My accents are good. You just don't like the translation I do. I got you. Okay.
Your English is not even that great.
Oh man.
to try to switch it from another language to English.
Hi, Mike. Hi, Gibby. My name is Angela Sowell, and I have been listening to you guys probably for the last 3 weeks and just joined Patreon. Really, really enjoy your podcast. Enjoy the goofy banter between Mike and Gibby. I am Team Gibby. I will say the first couple of episodes, I don't know if it was episode 4 or 5 or 6, but it was one that Gibby was doing where he was the commentator and you were providing the color mic, and it was pretty bad. That one was really hard to get through. So I'm glad you got your rhythm together because the way it works right now, it is really good chemistry between the two of you. I'm on episode 79, so I started from the beginning, and we'll just keep going on, and we'll maybe do Unsolved. I'm like some of your other listeners where I have to know what happens, but at the same time, your show is so good that I enjoy it. I'm from Hickory Creek, Texas, which is in the DFW Metroplex, and want to say thanks again for all you do, and keep your own time ticking. Take care.
Well, we appreciate it. Definitely appreciate you being a Patreon supporter. So she may or may not listen to Unsolved, which means she may or may not ever hear this voicemail. Probably should have played it on TCAT.
Well, eventually maybe she'll hear it.
Yeah, maybe she will. All right, buddy, that's it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So from Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.